let me start by introducing our two speakers for today. I can't tell if they're on the left or on the right for you, so you'll have to figure out who is whom. We have Jono, our digital strategist, marketing technologist, and full stack developer.
Yeah, that would
Jono,
be
give
me.
everyone a wave.
Hey.
It's rumor has it that Jono can read the internet like others can read the Matrix, but they haven't been confirmed yet.
And they've never been seen or heard from again.
And our second speaker for today is our very own Joost de Valk, the founder and chief product officer at Joost. And,
hey everyone, don't believe a word he says.
Well, we have a rumor about Joost as well. We heard recently that Googlebot is reading his bedtime stories, so that's why he knows everything about SEO. And with that, I will give the floor to the both of them, and have fun and good luck.
Thank you very much, Taco. That was very high expectations there. Let's see how badly we can let you down, or maybe not. So where do we start? We've done a few of these now, haven't we?
We do. We actually have done it. Yeah, maybe fourth, fifth. I don't know anymore. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, no, we have done a few. And the funny thing is that as you start doing these, the first few times you think, oh, there's a lot of news. And then this month you think, oh, it was holiday in the US.
That's why. I work around the clock, so I never notice something as trivial as human holidays. But yeah, that would definitely explain why it's been a bit quiet.
It is a bit quiet, but we still have quite a few things to go through. Have you actually played with this? The first thing we're going to talk about is a new feature in Google Search Console called Content Insights.
I haven't played with it, which is really annoying.
And usually we are in those betas, but this time our friends at Google decided to not give us access to that beta. We don't know why. No, but what we've seen so far is basically it's a combination of Google Search Console data with Google Analytics data. So the reason we don't have it for Yoast.com might very well be that we have European privacy laws and we might not, our settings might actually prohibit this. I don't know whether that's the case, but it might be. A lot of the people in the SEO community seem quite excited about it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but we've had this in WordPress, right? This is what Google Sitekit does.
Yeah, so we touched on this when it was announced a few weeks ago, I think. And the premise is you have two sets of data. You have your Google Analytics data, which is information about what people are doing on your site. And you have Google Search Console data, which is information about how people search. And there's been a little bit of integration between them, but we've never really had a good picture of how do people search, get to my website, and then move through it. And it would be really helpful to understand that whole journey for a whole bunch of business reasons. Maybe this will be the magic sauce that solves it, but from what I'm seeing, it feels like just a convenient set of dashboards with the same data represented in different ways. But yeah, we've had something like this in WordPress for a while now in the form of the Google Sitekit, I couldn't remember the name then, the Google Sitekit plugin, which I think is still beta, maybe, that brings it all into one place quite nicely. That if I was going to bet on one of these platforms being where you ought to be spending your time, my bet would be Sitekit at the moment. We might see more.
I did actually see a comment already from someone who used the Q&A section very wisely to tell us that he has it for a German site, so it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just
interesting.
Luck. When we get it ourselves, we'll play a bit more with it and maybe do a full review on the blog or something like that. Then something that we came across that is actually, maybe a sign of things to come, maybe not. In Chrome on Android specifically, when you hover over a link, which is harder to do on mobile than you reckon, but it means if you do a long press on a link, Google will actually tell you whether the web page you're opening is fast or not, which is quite interesting to see them display it like that there, and might be a sign of things to come in search results or somewhere else.
I think this is a huge deal. I think we know how obsessed Google are with speed, and whilst you can debate all day how significant a ranking factor it is or isn't, we know that they are really, really focused on speed. And we know that one of the things they want to do is provide users with rich, fluid, interactive widgets and components and cards and instant search results. And the only place they've been able to do that so far is within their AMP results, because they know that those will be fast because of the technology behind them. What they've struggled to do is to find ways to reward other fast websites for being fast enough. And this sounds like their measurement and their signposting and their technology is getting close enough to be able to say, we can guarantee this is a fast site, therefore give it better treatment, preload it, show it higher in the results, any number of things. But this is the foundation of them being able to do that stuff, I think.
Yeah. So someone's asking, how do you get to that? Well, so it is fairly hard. You need to use Android, and then the Chrome browser, or actually the beta of the Chrome browser. They're going to release this in Chrome 85. And then you can get to it by long pressing on a link. You'll see a pop-up and that says underneath the URL says fast or not. They announced this on the Chromium blog. We'll share all those links when we share the recording. But yeah, it is still quite hidden, but it is a sign of them being willing to use that data and that tracking to actually inform your decision about whether you want to click on that link or not.
We should also mention that this isn't the only way to check if your site's fast. Google's Page Speed Insights tool is now really, really good. It uses all of their core Web Vitals metrics, which we've talked about. If you want a quick glance to see, does it look like my site will be eligible for this, run it through that tool.
Okay. So then we also had loads of new things in search, loads of new search features. Some of them are, well, basically just extensions of stuff we've already seen. The first thing that comes to mind is a new interface for mortgages that Google announced, which looks an awful lot like the credit card stuff they've had for quite a long time. And it seems just to be them slowly going in on that finance space and eating every bit of thing there is to eat there.
Yep. Google is the super affiliate of all things, right? Why would they not provide a better credit card or mortgage search than the many websites out there that do a not great job?
I think it's a good step. It's also, well, in my opinion, Google does a lot of what we call disintermediation. Basically, if you make your money as an intermediate, whether you're an affiliate or you sell insurance or you sell mortgages, you should be scared by this, because Google is going to eat your lunch. And, well, there's not a whole lot of things that you can do about that if you're not adding a whole lot of value.
I'd say it's find ways to do things which Google can't or won't, which is going to be original research and feet on the ground and real subject matter expertise, and then find ways to expose that through your site. It's not enough to be an incredible expert and to have a generic affiliate website, because Google will just take your space in the consumer research journey. They'll never get to you.
Yeah. So if you're in the mortgage space now, to be fair, this is US only, I think, and it'll probably be US only for quite a while. And after that, it might come to the UK at some point. And then before this goes to anywhere other than those countries, you'll be a bit further behind, because it just takes too long and it might not be worth the investment. What's also interesting is a new feature in search to find where stuff is being broadcasted on live TV, which is actually very useful.
Yep, and it just so happens that this is one of the areas that YouTube has struggled to go into as the world's second biggest search engine. So Google being the way you discover live TV feels like a smart bet for them. It's worth saying, with all of these new interfaces and types of search results, we know there's a lot of pushback from various industries. There's anti-competition arguments happening in various high courts. It may be that this is the straw that breaks the camel's back on the EU and the US deciding that Google is too powerful and has too many controls. But we'll see. If not, this is definitely the future of Google just being that intermediary on everything. Mortgages and live TV are just two small parts of them providing this interface to pretty much any type of content. So this is a big deal.
Well, to me, if I type in the title of a movie and they know that I'm in the Netherlands, I want them to tell me which of the premium subscription services I can find that movie on, because it's very often very hard to find. And they know they've spidered all that data. Why wouldn't they show that to me? So I think there's a whole lot of that is very interesting. It's the same with football, or for you Americans, if there are any Americans watching soccer. If I want to see a football match, I want to know where it's being broadcasted, and there's about 20 options, and I'm not going to go through and figure it out. If I can do that search on Google, it actually helps me, and it helps them to know what people are looking at and what gives them a lot of interesting data.
Oh yeah.
Then they did something very funny specifically to India. They've added a virtual business card thing. Can you explain what it is?
Oh, if I knew, then I'd give it a go. Yeah, this strikes me as odd. So once upon a time, we had Google Plus, which was Google's social network, and everybody had a profile, like a Facebook profile or a Twitter profile. And in theory, it was your official version of you on Google. Really nice, failed abysmally for a whole bunch of reasons, and they canned it. Now what they've brought back feels like a light version of that in India, where if you search for your name or somebody searches for your name, you get a rich card result about you in the same way you do with some websites and products and services at the moment. But it's a card that you control and manage, like a business card, and a CV that shows up directly in the search engine. So really good for things like freelancers and independent contractors and prominent individuals. I like it. I think it's really interesting. I don't know why it's India only. And given that Google Plus failed and was killed, it feels odd for them to be recreating what arguably was the most important and valuable piece of it in the first place.
Yeah, it's very weird to me. People are asking whether we can share our screen and show it. Well, we can't. The only way we can actually see it ourselves is by proxying into India and doing this.
Which you probably shouldn't do, because it's definitely against various terms and conditions of Google's cheapness, but you can do it at home.
Yeah, it's hard for us to do even harder for us to do when we're also doing a Zoom call, because proxying to India is not going to improve the quality of our Zoom call. I'm going to guess.
Yes, and we should say that we'll share links to all of these resources after.
Yeah, we will absolutely share links, so you will be able to look this up. I think this is very interesting. The funny thing is that if you look at Google as one of the platforms, then basically doing virtual business cards on Google is yet another reason for people not to build their own website.
Yes.
Which annoys me no end, because even if you need a virtual business card and nothing more, build that website for yourself. Really do. In the end, that is a better idea than a whole lot of other things. But yeah, no, I don't necessarily think this is a good idea. But yeah, it is what it is. It's out there in India. We'll see whether they roll it out to any other countries. And as and when they do, we'll definitely play more with it. Then we have these new activity cards. Basically, what they're doing now is if you search for something and you've searched for something related before, they'll show you that more easily especially on mobile, as you'll get previous search results that they've shown you, and previous job searches that you've done, and it helps you as you're searching, but it also shows how deeply they track a whole lot of that, which is what I thought was very interesting, because usually they don't tell you that. But if you search for their example is healthcare jobs Tennessee, and they show you that you've already been searching for other job sort of related things, then I go like, oh, but you're openly playing your card about tracking that combination of things, which, well, it might not work in their favor everywhere.
Yeah, theoretically, things like it would be fairly easy for them to infer that I might, for example, be vegetarian from the recipe history search. I think the other thing that's really interesting from this is it's another step away from Google being somewhere where you type a question into and get a set of answers, into a platform for task management where I run my life. And things like job searches and recipes and things are complex multi-stage tasks that don't occur within a single search, that happen over multiple devices and days and environments, and they evolve. This is a big step away from a search engine into a personal assistant, which we know is where they want to go.
It definitely is. And one of the things that pops into my head, which I haven't tested yet, is which search query do they actually report when you click on one of those, and what will show up in your Google Search Console? Will your Google Search Console suddenly start showing queries that you don't rank for, but that might be related activity to other stuff
Interesting.
So where does this go, and how does this report is going to be very interesting to look at. Then we've also got a new one, which is actually not all that much of a new one. They announced last week that they have new home activities rich results, which is meant to be, for this COVID period, allow people to have rich snippets for things that they can do from the home. The result for that seems to be coming basically from event and video data. There's nothing really new about that.
No, this is, I thought this was interesting. This goes with the live TV stuff. This is them finding ways to get people finding and consuming more video on their platform. So the thing that this home activities schema and structured data is at its heart is exactly that. It's a way of exposing existing videos. So let's say 5 years ago, I created a video on how to do 30 push-ups. I didn't. But because that video existed in the past doesn't mean it's not a good resource, and it's not necessarily very discoverable. Now, with everybody at home and Google wanting to, again, be everyone's personal assistant and keep them entertained and be the platform they find things through, they're finding ways to expose that kind of content, the stuff that might have been an event, might have been a historical video, and now can be resurfaced and still be relevant. So that's pretty cool. There's probably tons of stuff kicking around in people's archives that they might have made historically that might be useful still today that ought to be marked up.
Yeah, so if you think, hey, I want that schema video markup that they talk about in those new things, we have a plugin for that. It's called Video SEO, and it has been outputting video schema since 2012, and still does so very happily. And then we have, the bit of sad thing, basically, Google adding support for article structured data to the rich result test tool. Basically, what Google is doing is making sure that the rich results test tool has all the features it needs to for them to be able to deprecate the structured data testing tool that they also have, which we're sad about because the structured data testing tool is actually better than the rich result test tool.
Yep.
Even though its name is the most horrible bit about it.
They really need to sort their product management out. And I love Google, I love what they do, but this is a mess. And to run in parallel like 3 different not very good tools and then to kill the best one because it's the hardest for them to manage and update is going to be harmful to the ecosystem. But we're limited to working with what they give us, and we'll have to find ways to cut.
And then talking about more schema, John Mueller had a whole interview. He does these webmaster things fairly regularly, and SEOs try to pick up on the new things he says there that might actually help people. He said that having extra structured data outside of the stuff that they have already specified is useful to them could be of help for SEO. Which
this is
really
the most
us.
Delightful thing. No, this wasn't a surprise for us at all, but it's really vindicating, really reassuring. So we've done so much stuff with schema over the last couple of years, and the size of the schema universe is huge, and it's so much bigger than what Google does with it. It's so much bigger than what the SEO industry are looking at, and the opportunity to do stuff with schema and to build things is incredible. However, Google talk very, very narrowly about the few specific bits of schema that they reward specifically. And that means that all the rest of this stuff doesn't really get much attention. So for them to have finally said, actually, guys, it's worth thinking about and looking at schema outside of just that tiny bubble is really, really great, because we know that there's loads of stuff that they use passively. We know that there's loads of stuff that they could use if more people adopted. This is, it's really good news. So hopefully people will pay attention to that and be willing to invest a bit more in schema and learning about it and building it, even though it might not necessarily give them shiny rewards immediately. It's good.
There was some confirmation of some of that already, where other search engineers or people working for Google were saying, hey, yeah, we use some of this stuff that we don't talk about yet.
Yeah, and of course they can't talk about all of it specifically in the same way they can't talk about the algorithm in depth.
No, yeah, but did they mention specifically the same as stuff? I think.
Yeah, that was one that came up. So yeah, when you cross-relate entities and you say this word Ferrari means the same thing as this brand Ferrari, and you describe those connections, they've said that they use that to help understand what things are about, and that might not affect your rankings, but it might affect how well Google understand what your page is about, which might in turn affect other things, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so we do a lot of this in Yoast SEO, right? So where if you have in your WordPress profile, if you add your link to your Facebook or Twitter or GitHub stuff, that profiles, we'll add those to the output on your site, basically saying, hey, this person here, this author is the same person as that Twitter user and that Facebook user. And this allows Google to tie all these things together and to basically make a bit more of a web out of all those separate links. Then we had, I wasn't surprised at all by this, but people were apparently. So can you tell people what GPT-3 is? Maybe that's the first bit that we need to explain.
I can try. So this is a quote-unquote AI content generation algorithm. The slightly longer version is it's the most sophisticated process we have as a species, as a civilization, for generating content that looks real. And it's open source. It's released by OpenAI, which is the big panel that Elon Musk and a few other people are involved in. And the idea is that if you feed this thing a few words, it can extrapolate and then produce more text. So you could say once upon a time, and it will write you a novel. And this is the latest instance of this technology. There have been previous ones that have been around for years and years. This one has blown the rest out of the water. And it's now got to the point where you can say once upon a time, and it will literally write you a novel. And it won't be perfect, and bits of it might not quite make sense, but it'll be close. And that's really put a spotlight on the question of what's the role this has in search, on content, on marketing, on the internet. Is this good? Is it bad? What's it do to resourcing? What does Google think? What do we do about quality?
So there's some bits to this that I find very interesting. So GPT-3 is the name for this. People are asking. Honestly, I've seen some things where people are feeding it sports data, like minute by minute sports data or feeds from who's playing the ball to whom, etc. And it's writing a live blog, like as it goes.
Yep.
I think that a lot of that work could be done like that. I don't think it's necessarily as good as a human yet, but some of it might actually be fairly useful to basically create live blogs for games that are not that interesting to that many people, but it might be easy enough to do this at scale for basically every second or third
systems.
league or etc. So, but what Google have come out and said is, yes, you can use this for translation of content as well. And we don't want any machine translated content in our search results, which was quite a definite statement.
It is, but then you look back 10 years ago and they said very, very strongly for a long time, machine-generated content is bad and isn't allowed in the index. And that's because at the time, machine-generated content was bad, and it was obviously bad, and people used it at scale instead of writing good, useful stuff. And then they stopped saying that because we crossed a line where actually, in many cases, machine-generated content was at least as good and in some cases better than what people were writing. So now for them to maybe make the same mistake twice feels a little bit short-sighted. I think what they're actually saying is we don't want lazy, bad, unchecked translation in the index. But if you can machine translate it to a high enough standard, then why would that be a problem? Maybe they'll change their mind.
The thing is that the line becomes very thin, right? So if you machine translate an article about Yoast SEO, that won't hurt anybody if you have a small mistake in there. If it becomes articles on how to use a particular medicine, then it becomes problematic.
Yeah.
And where's the line? Where do you draw that line? And for them to say we don't want that allows them to kick people out of the search results when they see that it's bad machine translated stuff, because they can just say we don't want machine translated stuff.
Yeah. Makes them easy to police. I mean, the counterpoint, I guess, is a lot of the localization and translation and even the content production that happens today on the web is done by low-paid people at scale. And the content isn't always great there either. So I guess the message underneath this is content, good quality content that's well-researched and well-written is still important and will be important even if the machines take over the world.
Yeah. Oh, so...
I say if, I mean when.
we should have ended on that note. But no. Okay. We have some more bits. You wanted to mention a couple of things about Google Search Console, I think.
Just there's some new shiny toys. You might not have seen this. I don't think they did a great release about it. But if you are in your Google Search Console account in the I can't remember what the section's called, but the section which tells you all the pages and keywords you're appearing for, it's like the main bit. You can now filter it by which types of rich results you're appearing in. So you can say, show me which pages I'm ranking with and which keywords I'm ranking for in which countries when I have a how-to result, or when I have a video result, or when I have a recipe result, which is really nice. These are the things you get when you use the structured data and schema markup that we output, spoilers, and you can then see and quantify where it's working and where you're competing, which is really, really useful to then say, okay, I have a really good how-to that's getting loads of impressions but not many clicks. Maybe I need to work on describing the steps a bit better, and you can turn that into a workflow. And it just makes that whole process really easy. It's really good.
Yeah, if I have to give one quick tip to people at the moment, it still is, and it has been for 6 to 8 months, use our FAQ and how-to blocks. Add them to pages where it's relevant and see that you can just grow immensely. Google Search Console is also very good at sending emails that are annoying and vague. So look at them, but take them with a grain of salt, because a whole lot of the emails they're sending are actually quite bad. And yes, we tell Google that too. Okay, then we have some news out of Bing. Let's go through it. Is it fun? Is there anything really?
Is it fun? Is it interesting? Let's do it in 30 seconds.
So the interesting thing I've thought is that they actually say they use user engagement metrics to rank websites, which is funny because you can only use user engagement metrics to rank websites if you have user engagement in the first place, which is, I think, problematic for Bing in many spaces. So how do you use that? Then we have good news coming out of Microsoft on the other end, which is that Internet Explorer is finally going away, which I think makes us all happy. Unfortunately, when I look at the stats, I still see like 1.5% of the web using Internet Explorer, which means that WordPress won't dump it yet, which means that we're all stuck supporting Internet Explorer for a while longer, which is annoying.
It's really holding WordPress back, so that's frustrating.
Yeah. And then they have some new webmaster tools again. They seem to be investing a whole lot resource into that.
They do, finally. It feels like it's catching up to Google Search Console. It has a few things in there which are nice around link data and error management that Google Search Console doesn't, but it still feels like it's not a very finished or mature product, and it's chasing Google's feature set in a lot of places. I really, really wish they would be braver or invest more resource in it and try and do something a bit different, take a different angle, take a different approach, rather than just copying Google Search Console, which in itself isn't the best product in the world. So it's a bit of a shame. But as you say, that there's a lot more progress on it than there has been in the last decade. So hopefully they'll keep going and they'll do some new stuff.
Yeah, even when I'm annoyed, well, taking a piss at Bing, we do really like them and we want them to compete because well, competition is always good for a market. Okay, so let's go to WordPress because WordPress had a big launch. We've had WordPress 5.5.
Woo!
Which, WordPress 5.5 has a couple of things that we are very excited about. I think the biggest thing for the web at large is lazy loading. We talked about
this
that.
is great news.
In one of our previous webinars. I don't know whether we talked about it last time, but lazy loading. Well, explain it to us.
When a web page loads, lazy loading means that only the images which are on the screen load. And that sounds pretty sensible and straightforward, but technically it's taken a long time for us to get to a point where this was easy and standardized to do. Historically, it relied on lots and lots of different flavors of JavaScript and manual development work, etc., which meant that people did it wrong or they didn't do it at all. And now it's automatically handled in WordPress, presuming your theme and plugins behave in a normal way. It means that you're not shipping big images to your users when they're off screen. It means if you've got things in drop downs or in the footer that take a while to load, you're not bugging up people's connections. Everything is faster, everything is better. You're not wasting data and overhead and chopping down trees to fuel servers. It's a really, really huge deal. And it's wonderful that that's now quietly happening in the background on WordPress sites.
That's the kind of things where I'm very happy that we are WordPress and that we can do these things. And that we can help the web forward. This was built by a Googler, but also former Yoasty, Felix.
Yeah.
I was just very happy to see this ship. Unfortunately, WordPress 5.5 also had a couple of JavaScript-related bugs that we were quite annoyed by because it broke Yoast SEO in several places for people. This was specifically when you were running plugins that were using bits of JavaScript that were changed in core, that were not properly tested, etc. The problem is if that another plugin breaks JavaScript, then our plugin can't run anymore. So we're basically hurt by that. We did a release last week to fix some of the hardware problems on the core side of that. I think we're there almost. With that, we fixed the largest bit, but it looks like WordPress 5.5.1 will be coming out fairly soon to fix a couple more of these bugs. And with that, will be a lot more stable than the current 5.5 is. When I say fairly soon, I think that the official schedule right now is to release 5.5.1 by tomorrow night, European time. So that's quite soon. 5.5 also contained XML sitemaps, which caused a whole lot of questions to us because we have XML sitemaps in Yoast SEO and we've had them for the longest time. And why WordPress core need to ship XML sitemaps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the short story. If you have WordPress 5.5 in Yoast SEO and you have XML sitemaps in Yoast SEO on, you're fine. Our sitemaps still work. The core sitemaps properly get redirected to ours. Nothing to worry about. If you don't use Yoast SEO, then why are you looking at this?
That's a good point.
But if you don't use Yoast SEO, you'll get the core XML sitemaps. They're not as good as ours, but close. I think it's a great addition to the web. We've been helping Google, a couple of Googlers and some other people build this, and I think it's a great improvement. And then Gutenberg also evolved quite a bit. Which stuff is new in there, John? Can you tell us?
In where? Sorry, I was just answering questions in the Q&A and I lost track of you for 2 seconds.
So what was changing in Gutenberg in the last bit? Was it?
Oh, the pattern stuff, I think, is the big one, which is a little bit techie, but it lays the foundations for all sorts of cool stuff to happen in plugin world. So the simple version is rather than just having blocks, which is what we're all getting used to in Gutenberg, you can now describe and save bundles of blocks that behave in certain ways or have different defaults and different layouts. And now things like plugins and themes can say a recipe block, for example, can be a predefined block of blocks with different behaviors and stuff. And there's a whole bunch of capabilities opening up here, which will make Gutenberg start to feel and be able to act more like a page manager, page builder, a site editor than just the content editor, which we know is the long game.
So it's preparatory work for full site editing, which is still supposed to come out by the end of this year in WordPress core. And honestly, it's getting better and better. There's a lot of nice work being done there. And then you were also quite excited about AMP for WordPress 2.0. And to be honest, I've basically lost track of AMP a bit. So do tell us what's in there.
So I don't think there's anything radically new, but it's getting so much sleeker. So where they're starting to get to is a place where you can install the AMP plugin and it just works. And that means that your templates are automatically converted to be AMP compliant and friendly. Any bits of custom JavaScript in plugins you're running or in your theme are automatically converted to work within the AMP constraints. All of your CSS is magically transformed so that it removes any bits that are problematic but maintains the functionality. It just works, and it is so sleek and so fast. And they're really doing a great job of tackling all the awkward edge cases of what happens if I'm running a translation plugin with a caching system that breaks my yard. All of that is getting fixed. So we're getting to a point where this gets very, very close to just working magically out the box, which is phenomenally powerful because that means that you're in a position where your site can never be slow. You take advantage of all of the latest performance optimization stuff, like automatic lazy loading was in AMP way before it was in WordPress core. Things like clever image processing and preloading. All of this just happens and it's taken care of. So you never really have to worry about accessibility and all these other factors because it's all baked in. I should also mention that this ties in very closely with the Web Stories plugin, which I don't know if we mentioned that last time. Was it a bit?
No, we didn't, I think. No.
Oh, so we definitely should. So if you're familiar with Instagram, as an example, you will be familiar with the story format, which is you get a mobile phone-sized screen with a big image and some text on it. And you can sometimes swipe through those across multiple pages of a story. The WordPress Stories plugin, is it called the WordPress Stories plugin? Web Stories. The Web Stories plugin, built by the same team as AMP, the Google folks, is essentially a kind of WordPressy flavor of that Instagram experience. And it's not hard to imagine that this might become an open source competitor or alternative to Instagram. So you can craft stories like Instagram stories in your WordPress editor in Gutenberg. You can drag and drop and transform text and put images in different sizes and things. And it produces SEO friendly, accessible, standardized WordPress web pages, and integrates with all the Yoast SEO stuff and other plugins and things. I think this is a really exciting way of using WordPress in a different way, in a different format that might open some doors to some new stuff.
It is very cool. And with that, we're actually talking quite a bit for something that is low on news. We've also had a couple of Yoast SEO releases. It might be good to highlight those. 14.8 came out almost 2 weeks ago, which added a new schema tab, which it might be interesting if you're on the post edit page. You'll see in the Yoast SEO meta box or on the side in the Gutenberg document sidebar. If you click on the Yoast logo, you get the Yoast sidebar, and you'll see the schema functionality we have there, which allows you to change the type of a page or post to another schema type. And you can actually also do this for an entire post type in your search appearance settings. So that's quite a cool thing. And then tomorrow we've got 14.9, and I can give you a bit of a sneak peek.
Secrets.
So we're launching Polish morphology. Morphology is our word form recognition. So where our basic SEO analysis basically only recognizes the form of the word that you're currently using, when you're using Yoast SEO Premium, you get our morphology if we support your language, and we detect the plural, or if you put in the plural, we detect the singular, and we detect past tense and present tense of verbs you use, etc. So you can write a bit more naturally, and Yoast SEO will be a lot better at recognizing that, and will basically prevent you from over-optimizing as well. So we're adding that for Polish. We have to add these per language. It's a lot of work. We have an entire team of language scientists doing this all the time. And we're also adding Hebrew key phrase recognition. We added Arabic a couple of releases ago. We're adding Hebrew now. We're constantly adding new languages. And well, this is something that you'll see us do for, time and time to come, because there's quite a few languages on the world to cover. So yeah, that's in 14.9 tomorrow. There's some performance improvements on the back end as well, which I'm very happy about. And then there's, after that, is 15.0, but I think that'll be just around the next webinar, so we can cover that at that point in time.
Excellent timing.
Then there is some other news. Some stuff that I wanted to cover.
Yeah, so the Mozilla thing is the big thing, I think, here, isn't it?
Yeah, Mozilla was, yeah. So a lot of you might know of a browser called Firefox. What you might not know is that Firefox is built by a company called Mozilla. And Mozilla is actually not a company, but a foundation. And they are funded in large part by Google. Now, the problem here is that they get paid by Google to be the default search engine in Firefox, which in itself is weird in many ways. It's weird that people get paid that much money for it.
There's a lot of historical drama around that as well, and some odd legal decisions, and a lot of complex mess that has just...
Yeah, there is a lot. The problem is we all like Mozilla a lot because they've done so much good for the web. So when they announced that they were losing some of their funding and they were firing some of their people, which was like some of the best people on the web work for Mozilla.
In areas like performance and standards and documentation in particular. These are people who shape the web.
Yeah, who are writing the MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network documentation. Some of the lead writers on that were fired, and so people are really important. So there was quite a bit of drama on Twitter and some other places. We reached out to a couple of those people to see whether they wanted to join Team Yoast. Unfortunately, none of them wanted to, because they'd all found new jobs already, and we're talking within like 24 hours of them being fired. So that was good. I'm very happy to see that for all of them. None of them were in the Netherlands, so it was it's not harder. But yeah, it was drama. It seems to have been resolved, though. Google has renewed the contract with Mozilla, so they're still getting money for the foreseeable future. And they need that money to be able to do awesome stuff and to build a competing browser with Chrome, which I think is, it's a bit weird for Google to have to fund that, but at the same time, it's a very good thing that it's there.
Yeah, for sure.
Related to that, also because we're talking about Mozilla being paid to make Google the default search engine on their browser. Another company that is getting paid an awful lot of money by Google all the time to have to be the default search engine is Apple. And now there are quite stark rumors about Apple launching their own search engine, which could be very interesting in terms of UI, UX, in terms of model, because Apple is moving to a subscription model for everything. If Apple included in that a web search engine that doesn't have ads, that could be such a game changer.
Especially when you also consider how different their approach to things like the App Store is versus, say, Google or the Android ecosystem. It's very more heavily regulated. It's very heavily standardized. It's very contained. I think it would be a very different type of search engine. I don't know what that would look like, but it's certainly not going to be the level of scale and openness of Google's, which might not be a bad thing. I don't necessarily need 1 million search results for my query. I want one good one, and maybe Apple can have a different model to achieve that.
Yeah, I hope so. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on it briefly because I'm very proud. Marika and I, Marika is Yoast's CEO and my wife. We invested together in WordProof, which is another WordPress plugin, but also a platform for timestamping content on the blockchain. If you don't know anything about it, just check it out, wordproof.io. Yes, this is a bit of an ad, and I love them. But I think there's a future there, and we're going to talk about that more, where we can prove that someone put out a specific piece of content at a certain point in time. We can prove that without a doubt, which is something that can be very valuable to a lot of people.
It's interesting legally. It's interesting operationally. I think, yeah, we'll definitely talk about that more. I expect within the next couple of months on something like this. But it's a big topic, but it's awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to do a subtle interruption. So
hello.
I just rejoined. We have a few more questions left. So
yeah, I've been trying to answer some of them as we went.
Yeah.
I saw a few that I wanted to check off. How can you add reviews in schema with Yoast is one that came up a couple of times in different forms. Well, you can't really yet, with a very hard yet. Yes, we have plans to do stuff around that, and I hope we'll be able to get that soon. So yeah. We'll obviously need blocks for that. So if you're not using the new block editor in WordPress yet, switch to that, because if we do new features around stuff like this, it's always going to be there.
I see a hard question on multilingual SEO.
A hard question on multilingual. I usually like
Oh,
this.
yes.
I know this is a topic close to your heart. So
can you
yes.
Flag it so that I can see
Sydney,
which?
yes.
Yeah, I see him there.
So from what I understand, Sydney has his website in both English and Hebrew.
Yeah.
And is now wondering if he's able to set SEO for both English and Hebrew separately.
Well, so to do this, you'll need a multilingual plugin, or you need two separate websites. I'm fine with either solution. We don't really have a preference. And then ideally, you would use hreflang to link from one to the other. So basically, you're telling Google, this is the English version. We have a Hebrew version here as well. There are quite a few plugins that do this. Some of them do this very well. Others don't do this that well at all. Our suggestion is to use Multilingual Press, which is a plugin that uses WordPress multi-site. So basically, you're setting up one WordPress install, but you're building multiple sites within that one WordPress install, and you're assigning each of those sites its own language. And then Multilingual Press ties these things together. And in doing so, it also sets the metadata correctly for all these things, and it takes care of all the hard bits. So I'd suggest using that.
All right. I think you just answered that one in chat already, Jono, about
yeah,
site
sorry,
speed.
I'm chopping some in the background.
I saw speed. It was like, this is a question for Jono, but we're too fast, which makes sense.
He's too fast writing, which is funny. I don't know what the question is, but maybe you can say it here, and Jono, what the question was and your answer.
Sure, it was a good one. It was let me find it. We talked about Google rewarding fast sites, but the tools this person is using give different numbers and different measures and different metrics. How do you therefore define and measure speed, and how fast should you aim for? It's a really good question. Until recently, there were 20 different ways to measure your site speed and 20 different metrics and answers, and it wasn't easy. Now it is. You use Google's Page Speed Insights tool, and you look at the core Web Vitals metrics. These are Google's metrics, and they're the best understanding we and they have of what fast looks like. As to what speed should you aim for, the answer is faster than you were yesterday. and rinse and repeat that and keep getting faster until it's impossible to do so because your competitors are getting faster, user expectations are getting higher. There is no fast enough. Keep working on it. I've just seen a good follow-up to your question about multilingual plugins, which I think Taco has just closed. Damn you, I was halfway through reading that. No, just saying, do I need, if I'm writing in anything other than English, do I need a multilingual plugin? I thought that was really interesting, actually. And the answer is no. But if you're writing in multiple languages, you almost certainly need a multilingual plugin because multilingual SEO is so easy to get wrong. And if you have 2 pages about the same thing in different languages, you need to tell Google that they're the same page in different languages. You need to define those connections. And the multilingual plugins are good at doing this. If you just have a site that is in multiple languages, chances are you're going to be competing with yourself and making a bit of a mess. It's got to be quite precise.
Yeah, we have a full course on multilingual SEO in Yoast Academy. It is not a topic that you can cover in 20 minutes. There's quite a bit to know about that. But yeah, no, there's a lot of things that you need to take care of, but that actually plugins can take care of for you. And we're currently laying the groundwork technically for some rather large performance improvements in that area, because we can help multilingual plugins do this a whole lot more efficiently. So I'm hoping that over the next 6 months to a year, we'll be able to do help multilingual plugins build something that's a lot faster and does this a lot better than they could in the past. People are asking speed. Do you have favorite plugins? Which is, I think, a very valid question. Honestly, the favorite plugin I have for speed is Get a Good Host.
Yeah.
So if most hosts either do stuff on the back or give you a plugin that you can also install. SiteGround, for instance, has a plugin that helps you optimize your site. Those are usually, those kinds of plugins are very good. So on SiteGround, it's definitely very good. If you're on SiteGround, you should definitely use SiteGround's plugin for speed optimization. I think it's called Cache Press or something like that, but I'm not. But it has SiteGround in the name as well. It makes it searching for it a lot easier. But WP Engine, for instance, does a lot of that caching in their systems, and you don't need a plugin. In many cases, adding a plugin on proper hosting doesn't make it faster. If you're on cheap hosting that doesn't do anything specific for WordPress, my first suggestion would really be to get to a host that does do things specifically for WordPress, because that'll make your life easier in the long run. If you don't want to do that, then there are some plugins, and Jono probably has a preference.
Sure. I guess the easiest answer is either WP Rocket or W3 Total Cache as the kind of the heavy lifter. WP Rocket is easier and sleeker, but is a paid product. W3 Total Cache is a lot more complex and has a million checkboxes, quite a lot of tailored customization, and is free. I would pair that with maybe Optimize is quite good at the moment, and I'll dig out some links because there's a whole bunch of moving parts. But yeah, start with the hosting, and then either WP Rocket or W3 Total Cache.
Yeah, W3 Total Cache I like a lot because I've known Frederick, who built that originally for a long time, but at the same time, it often feels like handing a butcher's knife to a kid.
It's like even if I'm setting up a new site, it takes an hour because you really got to think about every single setting and every config, and there are 100.
Yeah, and you know what to think about and which things you're forgetting and how to. So it is. A lot of these things are better left to a host, which is why I always recommend people just get a good host.
Yep.
I see one that may spark a bit of controversy, but I like the question. Are you pro or con page builders like Elementor?
Well, they have their uses, and I.
Should we leave it at that?
I want to like them. Sometimes they make it a bit hard. Elementor are good friends, but. I think there's a lot to be said for how Elementor allows people to build websites, and I think that's good. And it comes with a bit of a performance penalty in both in terms of speed as in terms of SEO, which they seem to be trying to mitigate, which is also good. I have a lot of trust in that team, but honestly, I would prefer if everyone just built on Gutenberg and on full site editing, which is coming to core over the future. I think that's better. I think a lot of these page builders were built because full site editing in core basically came too late. But as we have full site editing in core as soon as we have that, I would hope that everybody would slowly transfer to that, because honestly, as a plugin developer, having 25, 30, 35 different big page builder plugins out there is horrible.
Yeah, they all have their own different approaches, and they all come with some trade-off of flexibility for performance. And they make different technical decisions and different architectural decisions. It's a pain. Hopefully some consolidation will make
it. It's very hard for us to integrate with all of them, which is why, we get a lot. And if it's hard for us, I mean, we're the biggest plugin development team out there next to Jetpack. If it's hard for us to integrate with those people, then every small plugin developer out there is going to suffer. So some standardization in that would be very, very good, I think.
All right, that leaves us with time for a final question, and I'm going to launch another poll so that people can click while they listen to the final question. Do you have any preferences? I see you scroll through the list as well.
I'm scrolling. There's a good bunch of questions which I'm really happy with.
There's a good one about ranking factors in 2020 versus 2019. We love ranking factors.
Yeah. Ranking factors. Stuff has changed, and stuff changes all the time. I think ranking factors is the wrong way to look at it. Especially, I don't think that ranking factors exist for all of the web. They might exist in specific sectors or in specific parts of search, or and Google is looking at it more and more like that than it is at looking at one big result and changing stuff for everybody. If they are, then a lot of that is web core vitals and speed and things like that, and user experience. But no, there's no new ranking factors that suddenly changed the whole web. To be fair, I don't think we've had any new ranking factors like that for a decade at least.
No, it's not like they're saying, oh, and today's new factor is the color of your logo. No, it's for so long now, it's been, you said user experience, which is tied to the speed. Did it answer my question? Was it a good resource? Was it specifically useful for me? Like all of these things. Does every single page on your website provide the best possible user experience for a given user with a given problem? That is the only ranking factor. Everything else is just derivative.
I think that's it. And I love ending on that.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. It was great to have this many questions. I'm looking forward to next month.
Same here. Do people need to sign up anywhere for next month, or should they just keep an eye on their email again?
You should tell them. I don't know.
I have no idea.
This was an easy one. Just keep an eye on your email and we'll send you an invite for the next webinar.
Perfect. See you then, people. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.